Real Madrid are champions of Europe yet again, courtesy of a 2-0 win set up by Dani Carvajal and Vinicius Jr. It was far from a straightforward victory, as Dortmund and Terzic's tactics had Los Blancos worried the whole match. But what were Terzic and Ancelotti's tactics? Let's take a look, beginning with Dortmund and their valiant efforts. Early on, Dortmund were struggling in possession, as Real Madrid were pressing quite aggressively. This was true from goal kicks, where the centre-backs would split, with Chan being the only pivot, allowing Madrid to easily counter this with Vinicius on a centre-back, and either Camavinga on Chan and Rodrigo on the centre-back, or Rodrigo on Chan and Valverde aggressively pressing from out to in on the right-hand side. Open play was just as ropey for Dortmund early on, as the two centre-backs and even the goalkeeper were put under consistent pressure by the Real Madrid front two, helped by the fact that their 4-4-2 whilst defending was not flat, as this would have allowed Dortmund to easily find Chan. Instead, one of the wider midfielders, often Bellingham, defended fairly narrowly, tucking onto a Dortmund midfielder and then allowing Camavinga to press, similarly to the goal kick situations. With Madrid pressing effectively, the saving grace for Dortmund was Niklas Füllkrug, who had another outstanding performance as a target man. The Dortmund centre-backs could look to hit him with longer balls, and with Sancho and Brandt in particular buzzing around him, they could win the second ball and set Dortmund away on the attack, and this was threatening to be highly effective. Dortmund, however, began to have increasing success in the build-up when Terzic got Emre Can to more consistently drop in to become the third man, and this had a host of knock-on effects. Now they had a 3 versus 2 advantage in this phase, which would usually lead to one of the two widest centre-backs trying to get room outside the centre-forwards to receive the ball, which was perfect for Dortmund, as this would either open up room centrally or draw in a wider man like Bellingham into the press. Madsen took on the role of the inverted fullback alongside Sabitzer, and now this shape caused Madrid all sorts of problems. Firstly, it unleashed Ryerson, who was now more of a right wing-back, to move higher up the pitch, leading to dangerous combination situations with Sancho, as there could potentially be a 2 versus 1. And in fact, only Schlotterbeck had more touches than Ryerson. And the right side opportunities only became more and more pronounced for Ryerson in the second half, because no longer was it Bellingham at left wing, who was happier to come deep to track his man. Instead, it was Vinicius, who always had one eye on the transition, who was defending out wide, and as a result, Ryerson kept getting into good positions, running off of Vinicius, and he had the likes of Adeyemi and Füllkrug to aim for, but the final ball never materialized. And we'll look at why Vinicius was effective in this position a little later on. But one advantage it did give Madrid was the potential for Vinicius to use his pace to counter behind Ryerson, although Hummels was excellent in a covering role. But through the centre is where Dortmund were wreaking havoc. The new double pivot system meant that both Camavinga and Toni Kroos often found themselves being dragged high up the pitch to back up their press, opening up a chasm between attack and defense that Julian Brandt would be happy to take advantage of, and he was being found in this region, at times being joined by Sancho, and they now had the room to turn and look to find runners ahead of them. But again, the experienced defense of Madrid always seemed to do just enough. This was helped by an intelligent adaptation from Ancelotti. As the game went on, Rodrigo began to follow Madsen when he came in field, meaning that now Camavinga was not drawn as high into the press and would instead patrol the region where Brandt and Sancho were looking to receive between the lines. But let's take a look at what the champions were doing on the ball. Well, like Dortmund, when necessary they could go long, as Bellingham rarely remained off the left-hand side in possession. And when he came central, he was physical enough to use as a target man, looking to knock the ball down into Vinicius and Rodrigo around him, and this threatened to be quite effective. But in stark contrast to Real Madrid, Dortmund weren't too interested in pressing high up the pitch for most of the match. Instead, they were content to sit in a 4-1-4-1 mid-block, with their midfield looking to go man-to-man with Madrid's. But the Madrid midfield was fluid as ever and rarely actually looked like this. Toni Kroos would drop to left back, pushing Mendy higher up, while Carvajal advanced aggressively down the right, freeing up Valverde to move infield, much like Bellingham down the right. With Kroos being renowned as the Madrid metronome, Sabitzer was drawn high up into the press as he looked to reduce the effect of Kroos. And this would mean that Emre Can all of a sudden was at least 2 versus 1 down, as it could be much worse as Vinicius and Rodrigo could join in at times. Although Dortmund did try and adapt by having the wingers defend slightly narrower to even things up, it was to little success. While Camavinga and Kroos were fairly fixed as the deep pivots, the job of both Valverde and Bellingham was purely to find the space higher up in the midfield, usually created whenever the Dortmund midfielders were looking to apply pressure. In the end, Terzic looked to counter this by having Füllkrug either be the man to press Kroos, allowing Sabitzer to remain deeper, or alternatively, if Sabitzer was still in the press, Füllkrug could look to cut the passing lane into one of the midfielders, again with the goal being to protect the central midfield region. So Madrid attacked less down the centre, and in the second half in particular, Vinicius spent less time as a centre forward, instead moving wide left early, at times joined by Rodrigo, but more often they left the Brazilian isolated to create a 1 versus 1, and Vinicius had plenty of success against Ryerson, getting past him time and time again, but crucially, the experienced head of Hummels was always around to create a 2 versus 1, and protect Ryerson as much as possible, doing a great job of stopping him getting into direct goal-scoring positions. It was a game decided by moments, as a set piece and poor pass from Maatsen were the difference makers, rather than tactical ingenuity. Dortmund will be delighted with their run to the finals, but bitterly disappointed with the result, as they had more than enough chances to make it a truly special occasion. Although Real were under the cosh at times, they never panicked, showing just why they're European royalty. For the manager tactical score, both managers were solid, with a late flurry from Madrid making the difference, meaning Terzic gets an 8, while Ancelotti gets a 7. But drop your ratings down below. And on the topic of Madrid, check out this video explaining Ronaldo and Messi's finest showdown. Click on screen now.